Shabbat Shalom family. It's Ty with the Intuitive Cosmic family. Last week, me and the family recorded our Numbers, King James Version of the Holy Bible, and we did Numbers chapters 17 through chapters 21. Unfortunately, the software or app, should I say, that we used to record with did not download successfully, so basically there was an issue with the way it was recorded and downloaded, and we did not get a chance to get back around to re-recording our Sabbath session. So today I decided that we would just go ahead and kick off this Sabbath session, and I'll just reiterate some of the things me and the family spoke about for Numbers chapter 17 through 21. And this week we went ahead and we read Numbers chapters 22 through chapters 24. So right off the bat for Numbers chapter 17, God instructs Moses to go on with these 12 rods, right? Because they were a representative of the 12 tribes of Israel. He goes on to speak to these people in the tribes of the congregation, should I say, and he lets them know that each rod is basically a representation of the head of the household. It's a representation of their fathers, of their lineage for each tribe. And he goes on to let them know that in front of the congregation as a testimony that every man will get a rod, and each rod and only one of the rods will blossom, or that a rod should blossom. And basically it's basically supposed to be that rod of that household that blossoms is also going to be the one who is going to lead the children of Israel from their murmuring, right? So it says, and I will make cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you. So also speaking about how they're murmuring against Moses, right? Because a lot of this is they have been speaking out against God, but a lot of times it was the the children of Israel. They have been murmuring, right? Speaking, gossiping, talking down on Moses and Aaron for their leadership and having them go into the wilderness. And things of those sorts. And so Moses goes on and says, each rod is for each prince according to their father's houses. It says it's an even 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron's was among the rods, right? And Moses laid the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle as witness. So you go into verse 8, and it says, and it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi, right? And so we know these are our high priestess lineage line, was budded and brought forth buds and bloomed blossoms and yielded almonds. And Moses brought out all the rods before the Lord and unto the children of Israel, right, so that they could look on to and see. And they looked and took every man his rod. And the Lord said unto Moses, verse 10, bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels. It says, and thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. So it's basically saying now Aaron's right lineage, those from the house of Aaron, now they are basically, God has given them the responsibility, the duty that should anyone be speaking out and murmuring, against the Israelites, against the people as a whole, and against God or Moses, any of the leaders or prophets that have been put ahead of the congregation, that he is in charge of, really discipline, right? He's in charge of upholding this law. He's in charge of upholding this testimony about, any rebellion and any murmurings against God and against his prophets. Going into chapter 18 is just speaking about the Lord speaking to Aaron and saying in verse 1, thou and thy sons and thy father's house will thee bear the iniquity of the sanctuary. So when it's saying bear the iniquity, so it's basically saying they, it's, while it's obviously an enamoring situation to be feeling like the leader, right, to be the one to uphold these men, he's also letting them know, like, this is a lot of work, right, and it's a form of inequity, right, because now he's got to be responsible for, the charges, right, the disciplinary actions that have to be taken against people when they come out, because that's not always a good feeling, right? We love our people, we grow close to them as congregation members, as people who are a part of our tribe, a part of our lineage, a part of our spiritual family. And so knowing that you might have to take action against them, when they do things against God's will, that's not always necessarily something that you want to do, but you have to do. And God is saying, y'all are the leadership, y'all are the head. You will be responsible for leading out this cause. So yes, he says you will bear this inequity of the sanctuary. So you basically saying you're responsible for this. You're the overseer of this. It has to be done. It's a part of your priesthood. And it just goes on to, now it's going to go on to speak about offerings. So it's going to speak about the offerings that the congregation is going to give the good Lord, and how the good Lord goes on to give these trespassing offerings, how they are submitted and what they're submitted for based on the sins to the house of Levi, right? And then also it's going on to speak about in general how everyone needs to be giving up their offerings to the good Lord, and how the portions that the good Lord will eventually give on to the house of Levi. So basically saying that the house of Levi gets their blessing and their favor directly from the good Lord, and that a lot of their offerings will come from the good Lord, unless it's specifically for like a sin offering. Then obviously you're going to meet the priest, you're going to talk to the priest about their sin offering in that fashion. But they're talking about just in general. And then it speaks a little bit more in detail in chapter 9, should I say 19, about purifications. Then it also goes into speaking about touching, dead bodies. Like once again, that's it was significant in the book of Leviticus, and it's also been brought into Numbers about purification methods, about cleanliness and uncleanliness, and what to do in cases, right? Because as we know, as we are living, we do have those who pass on. So if someone were to pass on, this is how we deal with those unclean spirits. Should we have to lay hands on someone's dead body, which is obvious, right? This is the real world we're living in. There are some of us who have to actually deal with that, just like in today's time, at the mortuary, the morgue, you have people who have to deal with this. So it's just telling you about the purification steps and the time frame of the purification steps, should you be dealing with someone who has passed on and is no longer with us in the physical. So finishing out in this portion of Numbers, going through 20 and 21, Aaron and his sister ends up passing away. So Miriam passes away, Aaron passes away, and God says it's because Aaron did not follow law. It also speaks that Moses didn't follow law because of the murmurings with the people, right? So they're murmuring about drink, and so God instructs Moses and Aaron to smoke the rock twice and for the water to come out. But basically they had, they had secondary thoughts of if this is even going to work. Like, what? God is instructing me to do something. So for them, we thrusting this rock twice. Is this really going to bring forth water? So they, they second guessing God instead of moving forward with what he's saying. And for Aaron, his time is pretty much running short anyway, because this isn't his first time that he has backslided against God. And then, he's definitely being held at high regard, because Aaron is what? Aaron is a part of the Levites. He is high priest, and so he definitely needs to be following God's law and commandment, right? Because he has to be that one. People in the congregation and the community are looking up to him for leadership. He is supposed to be considered of an elder and someone who's dealing directly with God. So if he's not obeying God and he's not being obedient, then what's the point? So this is the things that we have to keep in mind, people, about all of us being obedient and answering and hearkening unto God's word and his commandments and laws when he gives and instructs us to do things, especially when you're someone considered, a high priest, a prophet. You have to be doing what God is telling you to do, because it's all ultimately consequences. Aaron's sons have met several of those consequences, and so have others throughout the community and congregation of the Israelites. So then we go into, like I said, the death of Aaron. And then also God speaks on Moses's bereavement as well within that whole process. Although he is still going on and living, um, it's not quite his time yet. But Aaron basically goes on to meet his maker. They disrobe him, and his duties and leadership now is betrothed upon his son. So one of the things me and the family had spoke about last week was the wilderness. I said one thing that really stuck out to me out of the chapters from last Sabbath was in chapter 17 through 21 was at the end where the Israelites basically is speaking about, you know, so basically, the Israelites ended up going into two separate wars because different, congregations, different tribes are not interested in them passing through on their way through the wilderness to the land that God is trying to get them to, right? And so they end up in two battles, should I say, and they win. They come out winning, and I thought that was very monumental because here these people are, complaining, they want to go back to Egypt, and talking about their circumstances, yet y'all feel so down and out. You were able to be in the wilderness with no stable place to lay your head, and you were with the grace of God, should I add, the grace of the good Lord, the Most High God. They were able to conquer two separate groups of people in battle. So that is definitely something that stood out for me. And it says a lot about God's favor and his grace and his coverings for these people, even throughout the midst of their murmurings and their backwardness, their hard-heartedness, and their ability to oversee and overcome their current and present state at hand. And their ability to believe in God, even though he has continuously made way for them, continuously through spirit, showed this group of people his powers, right? Showed them his powers, been able to show that he is not allowing them to just be swallowed up, right? Because with all of this, it's very easy to say like, okay, we will no longer be able to continue on, but they keep gathering numbers even though they've lost people throughout this nonsense and this murmurings, and they've been able to continue to push forward and acknowledge their gains even while in the wilderness and not having an actual place to call home as of yet. Okay, family, we are now stepping into our discussion about Numbers chapters 22 through 24 of the Holy Bible. We read the King James Version, and Leah will speak about what spoke out to her the most.
Hello. So what spoke out to me the most was Numbers chapter 25, 24, 23, verses 11 through 12. And Balak said unto Balaam, What hast thou done unto me? I took thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast blessed them altogether. And he answered and said, Must I not take heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? This stuck out to me because Moab had sent Balak, and then Balak sent Balaam out because I guess Moab was maybe intimidated by the people of Israel. So basically sent them down to be cursed. And instead of Balaam going along with it and cursing it, he spoke to the Lord, and the Lord told him not, because these people are powerful and they're blessed. And so Balaam listened to the Lord, and he's basically doing the right thing. And Balak is kind of maybe confused about it. And basically he's like, so why are you blessing these people when you were told to curse them? And I thought that was interesting.
Extremely. Brings me to in Joshua's chapters 24 verse 15. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So that sticks out to me because even though he was told, right, and he knows he's speaking to the king, right? The king, and he's the king and the prince of his land, but he chooses to do what? He's obviously a God-fearing man in a sense, because he says, I'm going to pray first. You've given me instruction. I know you're of prominence. You are the reason why I have the things I have in one sense, maybe materialistically, but I have to call unto the good Lord before I do what you're asking me to do, because that is the true purpose that I'm serving, right? So he calls on the good Lord. The good Lord says, these people from the house of Jacob, the Israelites, they're a blessed people. We will not be cursing them. You need to pass this word along. Mm-hmm. And so he does. He goes along to pass that word along in a sense, but they're not hearing it, right? Mm-hmm. So he still does what, right? He ends up riding along, and then his donkey ends up seeing the angel. He's now thrashing his donkey because now he can't see. And then the angel appears before himself. God is also speaking to him, and he's letting him know, like, hey, this is not what you were supposed to do. Now, it kind of gets a little confusing in there because he says, I'm going to pray to the good Lord to see if I should go. And if the good Lord tells me to go, then I will. And if he tells me not, then I won't. And he goes anyway, and the good Lord is like, well, you weren't supposed to go or whatever. But what it was is his misinterpretation of what he heard from the good Lord about going. Mm-hmm. Because you were supposed to stand what? 10 toes down. Mm-hmm. Remember, we are being still without wavering. You cannot waver. He already told you what it was the first time. The good Lord's not changing. And this is why it speaks about that later on in Numbers, right? It says the good Lord doesn't need to repent. So he's not coming back off of what was said. He already said these people are blessed. You know what I'm saying? There will be no fight against them. They don't have any forms of divination involved with them. They're not coming to do, no harm. They just making their way through. Now, why they might feel that, they've came across, they don't mention it, but my belief is they know about the conquerings of the other two nations. Mm-hmm. Well, these other two nations did what y'all were getting ready to do. Come out against people without even knowing. You're going off of hearsay. And these other two nations were, just being asked could we walk through your lands? We promise we won't touch anything, and if we do, we'll make it right. We're just here to pass by. We're going somewhere completely different. We're not trying to stay. We're not trying to be in your place. And they didn't even want to allow that. They just wanted to do what? Be hard-hearted. They wanted to be unkind and without grace. And so God said, you know what? And then even then, they didn't embark themselves upon war with them. Those people went out against them, remember? They came out to battle against the Israelites, against the house of Jacob and these 12 tribes. So, you know what I'm saying? This is what happens. That ends up being the outcome of it all, right? They really just protected themselves in reality, and they came out on top. Yeah. So to speak. Richie, do you have anything you would like to add?
What spoke to me was Numbers 22, verse 6. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure, I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursed is cursed. Well, the reason why it spoke to me was because it's like saying, if you bless somebody, then you're going to get blessed too. Like, you're going to get a blessing. But if you curse somebody, you're going to be the one getting cursed, and they're going to get a blessing.
Okay.
So
that's what Spirit brought to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So they putting out blessings, or are saying whom thou bless is blessed, and that who is cursed is thou cursed. That's definitely a parable piece there. And it just sounds like this person is moving out of fear, right? Which is definitely not a spirit of who? It's not
God.
Yeah, it's not a spirit of God. It's not a spirit of the good Lord. The Most High does not have us dealing with fear. They're dealing with people that they haven't even met. This is why, Balak was, sent out wanting to speak. You know, Balaam is wanting, Balak and Balaam are wanting to speak to them, and so Balaam basically is like, you know, I've got to deal with the good Lord. I've got to speak to him about this, what you're getting me to do, because the good Lord is telling me that these people are blessed people. You're saying, the opposite thing, but I have to find out for myself. But even though he's kind of riding the fence, and this is why he ends up being placed in the instance where he does, where his ride, right, runs off on him, and it also is an instance that we don't always see often, but it does take place. And so basically, Spirit is telling us that he ends up speaking to his, it says to his donkey, right? He's speaking to his ride, his way on his journey, or this I'm just gonna say ox. But his donkey is basically done told him, like, you done had me since I was yay high. Have I ever steered you wrong or not gotten you where you needed to go? Like, it was obvious what was taking place here, right? Mm-hmm. While he was embarked from his journey and led off, and then obviously he made his way back, and so he ends up speaking to this donkey and the angel, right? Mm-hmm. So he's speaking to an animal. Animal speaking to him, letting him know you done messed up. You done tried to smite me in order to get me to act right, even though it's you who's misbehaving. So what stood out for me the most was in Numbers 24. He says, if Balak will give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the Lord. He said, I cannot go beyond the commandment of the Lord to do either good or bad of my own mind. But what the Lord saith, that will I speak. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's powerful. And he's only really coming back up off of this after that instance that just happened. You see how God always sends you a little reminder when you go off course. Mm-hmm. And lucky for him, he was spared. And he says, and now behold, I go on to my people, and come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor hath said, and the man whose eyes are open. So he's basically saying, and I'm also going to go back and take this a step further, because you getting ready to try to get our people killed, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm telling you, the good Lord says, let's stay away from this. We're not doing this. We're not touching these people for no reason. Let them be, because if you do initiate a fight with them, like, not only this is how smart enough and loving this man is in another sense, because he could have just left it there, right? Mm-hmm. Because some people are like, oh, well, he did it. That's not enough, because had he just left the situation alone, he could have thought it ended there, knowing the type of man he dealing with. Because when you're dealing with people like this who are filled with pride and ego, right, they have a point to prove. So even though he knows a lot of the things that he's being told, about his messenger and the person he trusts, who was supposed to go out and do this duty he asked, and he's telling him, I can't because of the good Lord. Well, he's kind of like how Pharaoh and them was, and a lot of adversaries. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. I have a point to prove. I've already told people, right, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do it. Even though, Spirit probably telling him it's wrong, and someone telling him that he's been dealing with that he's supposed to trust, like, this ain't it. I'm going to do it anyway. Nope. I'm going to take this a step further. I'm telling the people what God told me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that they don't go out here in war, and if they do, at least now they know. So if somebody decides to go and backslide against the good Lord and do what you're asking instead of the good Lord, then, that's on them. And this is why I speak about this often, about a lot of people's ability to not see things, because people look at kings and prophets, or in our modern times, whatever you want to call someone who has been given the duty to lead their nation, as if they're God. No, there is only one true God, right? We're only dealing with the Most High God, so his instruction leads over all. So why are we, listening to instruction, right? We treat some of these people, and it's crazy to see people and who follow religious beliefs, who know this or should know this, and they go to their churches and stuff, and they let the pastor. It's just like Aaron. Aaron was not leading the way he was supposed to. So imagine you going in there and you listening to Aaron. This is why he had to go. You listening to Aaron and he tell you something wrong because he could. Because you got to remember when Moses went up to the mountains to meet the good Lord, Aaron was down there collecting gold, letting these people talk him into building, Baal, building this golden calf to worship, knowing this was wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So if we sit up here and be like, oh, he's the priest, at the end of the day, whether someone's the priest, the prophet, the president, the dictator, the whatever they are, the king, the queen, whoever, at the end of the day, when you know better, you do better. So I'm listening to the instruction of the good Lord. They're telling me this type of situation, this belief, this law, this something is wrong, or whatever it is, something just don't feel right about it. That's where I'm going. This is what I was told to do, so I'm not, I'm not going to partake in this. Because I was told by the good Lord that this is not it. That ain't it. Because remember, they are man just like you. And this is what's told too in Numbers. He said, God ain't man. He ain't lying. And he ain't repenting. So what is the argument for? Because you're dealing with men who are in the flesh, or people who are in the flesh, should I say, and their ego and their pride and their sense of control and power have led them, to do things that are ungodly. Their obedience is now their self. And even Balaam says this. He says, I'm not good or bad, your instruction. I'm not listening to it before the good Lord's. I'm going to call on the good Lord every time you instruct me, whether I think it's good or bad, and I'm going to let the good Lord be the leader of me. Okay? Just like going back to Joshua's chapter 24 at the end of that verse 15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, the good Lord. Okay? I can't serve these other people because they gonna fall short of the glory every time, and I can't afford to be falling short of the glory with you. So we'll leave it there, family. Thank you for showing up and listening to today's Sabbath session. God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe to the page, and continue to look forward to our Sabbath sessions.